Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And now we got my next year-end list, the top 50 best songs of 2020. Okay, I normally start this list by saying that it's the most personal, requires the most work beyond just going through thousands of songs from hundreds of albums. That was certainly the theme of how I set things up last year, because the role music played that was a lot more therapeutic for me required some emotional heavy lifting. And you would think 2020 would be the same, but paradoxically, while the rest of the world fell into chaos, well, I'm not gonna say I prospered by any means, but I think handling some past grievances and trauma allowed me to have clear focus in 2020. So it didn't just feel like an endeavor revisiting hard emotions going through this list, so much as supporting the mechanisms that I had already put in place, even if they were sorely tested. Now, granted, I think the only reason I didn't go more stir crazy was because I simply had so much more music to go through, and spoiler alert, if there was any enormous challenge to making this list, it was simply pruning it back to a top 50. I could easily make a top 100 out of what I heard in 2020. Follow me on social media if you maybe want me to spoil what else could have easily made this list. And I'll get into this a lot more when I discuss the albums, but there is significantly more here, and that feels a little bit more reserved in its pacing and presentation. And given that country had a banner year, you might as well get used to hearing a lot of it on this list in comparison with, say, rap or metal, both which I think had better albums than individual songs. And frankly, metal didn't have a good year at all. But let's get this started, and since we're gonna start with country...
All the crooked roads will only lead you home. This town is a woman.
So I'll admit a little bit of disappointment with McKenna in 2020. The Balladeer is still a great project, but the bar she has set for herself is just incredibly high. But this opening song is beautiful across the board. The interweaving harmonies with the women of Little Big Town adds a very welcome bit of warm swell to her mix. The high concept of idea of the song is so detailed and nuanced in highlighting both our relationships with women and locations, and the startling number of parallels between how we treat them, coupled with Dave Cobb's wonderfully balanced and organic production. I mean, it might be a very easy song for me to like, but when McKenna is on her A game, few are like her. So spoilers, I could only include 3 Spanish love songs cuts on this list, and they're actually not the band for which I struggle the most with my 3-song limit. But what makes Generation Lost stand out isn't just the frenetic pacing and the killer bass work and the devastating writing and their frontman's shredded shouts, but the tension at the core of the song. A generational conflict with the previous generation where they're not listening, they stop trying to get your unique struggles as they still perceive you as kids, which are nowhere close to going away, and the struggle to balance out independence and pleas for help. It can be genuinely painful, especially when your own peers are dying way too young for all the wrong reasons. I mean, this album was already way too real before 2020 became a proper hellscape. Now it's just cauterizing the generational gap.
'Cause on paper you don't break them, but it hurts so bad the way you bend the rules.
So this song snuck up on me in a way I can't quite explain. The murky, watery production, the muted hook, Niall Horan's very reserved delivery. It's a song all about simmering and distance, where you can tell that there is hurt and mistrust just below the surface, and he's gonna try and probe it with enough care to show some maturity, but it's still a little too deeply to be comfortable. This is a song that leans into the nuance of relationships and emotional intelligence in a way you do not get from a lot of guys within pop, and I can see why some might find it a little discomforting, but you know what, in showing that depth and emotional intelligence, Niall Horan put himself in different territory as a songwriter, and this might be some of his most underrated and sharp writing to date. So yeah, great little song.
So what? You're not in love. Don't go
Yeah, Carly Rae Jepsen made a bubbly anthem to going out and loving the single life that can only be properly described as splashy, especially with that bright, crisp synth line and how they chop up the vocals for the post-chorus. And what I love most is how she balances out the comforting side of, hey, you know what, it's all gonna be okay, you're gonna get through this, and also, hey, look at all this freedom you have. Dance by yourself if you absolutely have to. You will have more fun than you probably think, especially by that final hook. There's just so much vibrant emotion that I absolutely feel kind of cheated that I didn't get to dance at a party to this while being single the majority of this year. Because you know what, for at least that moment, it would have been terrific.
Look to the sky, or rather the canopy we live beneath tonight. Parallel scenes, woven dreams cover this valley and mothers this home.
So it's kind of tough to talk about any Patricia Taxxon song outside of the context of the album, especially one like this opposite a very spare synth backdrop with the vocals coming from the cyber diva Vocaloid, but it's also one of the most melodically beautiful songs I have heard all year, especially in how it bends across different keys. This is a song that yearns for the stars, where if you're not convinced that a synthetic voice can really tug on your heartstrings, this song will seal your wonder, playing the role of someone who looks upon a desiccated world to wish for something sparkling amidst the cosmos. I will say the ending's a little odd, which keeps us a bit lower on this list than I would prefer, but you know what, it's a gem in every sense of the word.
I've been building up this thing from once. Oh, resentment.
I mean, Kesha teams up with Sturgill Simpson and Brian Wilson for an acoustic ballad that wound up the best part of the glorious mess that was High Road. And you know, what's peculiar is just how deeply sad it all feels, especially when you consider how the backing vocals could very well serve as a quiet mirror to her own feelings, where she can't even hate her lover here so much as feel deeply in her gut that the relationship is damaged and hurting them both, and she doesn't know how to fix or leave it. It was an early, complicated bright spot for a tough year for everyone involved, and even though it's not the banger that a lot of people were hoping for, Kesha once again proved that she can deliver a slow burn with the best slum, and this is a great one.
'Cause you're the only one I need to put a little love on me.
I really gotta wonder, why do I like Niall Horan making these lightly toxic songs? Because this is absolutely a post-breakup guilt trip, where he's playing off the most delicate of arrangements to win back his lonely ex. But what I think works about it is just how much it's all pretty much self-delusion. He's mature enough to realize the relationship is spent. He's just wondering about where the hell she went, and it's a plea more for attention than anything. Just a hope that there's enough there to make sure that there's some reconnection that can work when he knows it's a lost cause. And yet, he's such a well-balanced and naturally charismatic old-school pop star that he can make this landing stick regardless. He's described as one of his favorite songs. I completely see why.
I'm throwing caution. What's it gonna be? Tonight the winds of change are blowing wild and free.
So, spoilers, the Killers made two grand, sweeping songs in 2020 about trusting their instincts for huge romantic gestures, and yeah, they're both on this list. This is probably the lesser cut, but it's still goddamn amazing. A fantastic solo from Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac by the end, the sense of distinctive detail that makes the vivid, overblown color of the mix just really pop, Brandon Flowers hollering at the top of his lungs, and the song's got such a crystalline sweep that you can easily imagine this band blasting this over the desert as the only place wide enough in order to capture this sort of magic. You can argue it's a bit of a throwback to a certain brand of Vangelis-inspired heartland rock from the 1980s, and you would be right, but again, when it soars like this, who could complain?
You make it hard. Baby, I am so into you.
Okay, look, there are 3 songs in this list that might be considered comedy tracks first and foremost, but again, I'm not really above them, and when you have Dierks Bentley and his Hot Country Nights getup making a steamy, neo-traditional bedroom ballad with Terri Clark, who fully commits to selling it, and is way more legit than it's got any right to be for this joke, even before the key change, you got something insanely special. Either country or parody, this stands out and can splash damn near everywhere. No, I'm not gonna apologize for that. This rules.
Greyhound, run, 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 Greyhound.
Yeah, this song kind of blew my mind when I first covered it in my IG song review series, at Spectrum Pulse. You should really be following me over there. And, well, nothing on Ashton Irwin's album reached this height. Greyhound is a bloody slice of mid-90s inspired rock that kicks way more ass than it has any right to. It sparks some comparisons to Soundgarden for its ragged, down-tuned melody and the acoustics that did build into some impressive heaviness. And while it takes him a while to wrench his vocals into a full-throated yell, he makes up for it with some really gristly lyrics, and by the solo, he actually does get there, especially with that big backing choir roaring behind him. And when you factor in he effectively did this on his own without major label support, yeah, the best thing related to 5 Seconds of Summer since Jet Black Heart, and if it's not a glaring sign that they at least have the instincts for some great rock music, I don't know what is. I'm including this song on this list because it got to me in a way I never had any reason to expect. I mean, it's Rivers Cuomo on an Avalanches song with some interjections from Pink Siifu, and it interpolates a tribute to the late David Berman of Purple Mountains. It should not work, plain and simple. And yet, Rivers Cuomo's anxious earnestness makes this the best thing he's done in years, possibly decades. The supple, organic swell playing off the acoustic guitars, the gentle bass line, the association sample, capturing that wintry magic even before the sleigh bells slip in. And even though I never really had a chance to get into Purple Mountains before David Berman's death, this just captures a magic that highlights just how much was lost in his passing and the desperate grief that comes with trying to recapture it, if only for a moment. Yeah, this gets me every time, man. Every time.
Hold me, let's be lonely together.
Okay, we will deal with just how much Caitlyn Smith's sophomore album got slept on this year in a later list, stay tuned. But this closing track once again proves that she can send off an album with so much delicate pathos and power. And it's interesting hearing the parallels between the last closer, Cheap Date, which is all understated romance and soft focus, with Lonely Together. It's more complicated, it's messier. A song written with the road in mind after working way too goddamn hard and pleading for a connection that might not be fully present in mind or body, but can provide some sort of solace. And in 2020, a year where we became all too conscious of our sense of distance, yeah, this resonated the most for me, by far.
So I'm out here, drawing on the sidewalk, while the storm of mid-morning's blowing in.
Okay, on some level, putting a low-key Ruston Kelly song on this list is kind of cheating for me, because it might as well serve as a blank space of, hey, you want to explore deeply held emotions or maybe lingering trauma for a couple of minutes here? But this isn't also quite that. This song is coping, a dreamer looking for an easy escape and confronting the reality that comes with how you're not really gonna recapture that childlike sense of wonder, and the ways to achieve it now are way more chemical. And while I don't think Ruston Kelly's ever made it dream country per se, with all the glittery guitar and the tinkling accents and the spacious mix and the touches of pedal steel, probably the closest he's ever found to it. This is one of the most realistic hangover songs you'll ever get. I'll leave it at that.
It rained, oh, it rained. It stopped for a little while, and then it rained.
Okay, look, if it wasn't for the fact that I limit myself to 3 songs per lead artist on my list, this would be the place where I would put in Champagne Problems by Taylor Swift. I've already talked about the song extensively on Billboard Breakdown. I absolutely adore the song, but somehow there were more better Taylor Swift songs in 2020, and we will get to them. Well, instead, we got more Hot Country Nights, and this is such an inspired, singular parody of a very specific Garth Brooks song that I'm almost amazed that Dierks Bentley got away with it. More importantly, it's a parody that gets exactly the sort of neo-traditional arena country bombast that makes the original kick so much ass, and then while it matches it to make fun of it, in a warped way, you could play this straight and it would still sound awesome. And look, I get if you did not grow up with neo-traditional country in the 90s, Hot Country Nights might seem completely absurd, but this is doing a tribute to a classic that's so damn well. Sam Hunt, take notes.
This much I know it's true. I came up and so could you. And fuck the boys in blue. Fuck them all.
I said on Twitter the first time I heard this song, RASCAL by Rumor is not only better than Bless the Broken Road, it might be better than anything that Rascal Flatts has ever done. And while I'm absolutely rooting for Rumor to follow it up, might wind up we only got this meme for a brief second, which is kind of a shame. That being said, if you want trap / R&B / country that seeks to find a glorious synthesis with rich harmonies and an instantly magnetic presence at the core, this song overflows with promise, the proper follow-through to everything that Lil Nas X laid down the year previous. And yeah, fuck 12, as if we need to say more in 2020.
Climb down the radio cloud. I remember what my name is now. I cut the water, lay the roadway down. You can call me Moses.
A song like this should not feel as unintentionally prophetic as it is. Back to Ruston Kelly for a bit with what might be his catchiest ever song, his interpolation of Video Killed the Radio Star. But where that song had to look backwards in what was lost, Radio Cloud snaps awake and has to trudge forwards, out of a murky headspace, laying down the path, burning away anything that could obstruct you, even if where you were was in your art. And maybe sometimes you need to be that person in order to cut him loose, which is reminiscent of the changing times that came decades earlier. Now, it turns out Ruston Kelly actually wrote this song in 2019 before anything surrounding the pandemic actually occurred, so he wasn't trying to be timely, it just kind of wound up like it. And yet, while I initially thought in my review of the song that this would stall out or not fully stick, the combination of that rich grayscale arrangement, the sharper nasal elements in Ruston Kelly's voice, it has the feel of someone coming out of their own sickness, be it physical or mental, and that understated bite gives it what it needs, and hell, maybe what I needed too.
Patterns of nature got nothing on me. The patterns of nature got nothing on me.
There's always a song like this that shows up on my list, an understated piano ballad that might play more towards adult contemporary, but always seems to have a little more going on within it. In this case, coming from this Aussie indie songwriter. And while it might seem like just another love song, there's so many fine details that push it past that. Her richer lower alto, the fact that she clearly knows that this is right, but she wants it to be a little more, and she will make it more, and there's a subtle recklessness in its push in its most two distinct lines. The first is, yours are the only love songs I'd ever written in a major key, where that promise really comes to light, her hope, and her drive is encapsulated in the patterns of nature got nothing on me. Where even if the pattern is this person fading out of that picture, she's gonna find a way to make it work regardless. It reminds me a lot of Avalanche by Sundays, a song I included on my list last year around this spot, and especially as the arrangement thickens and gets more spiky by the conclusion, it's got that same roiling force. A primal but kind of refined way to make a love song. Just works so well, you know?
It's gonna be a good day. I don't know why, but it feels like love's coming my way. And the sun ain't even shining.
Okay, look, there was a point where I played this song every morning for comfortably over a month after Sunday Drive came out, because Brett Eldredge writing about how he was gonna find a way to make a dreary, lonely day better, just goddamn stirring. I love this in the same way I've loved It's a Great Day to Be Alive by Travis Tritt. It's a little lonely, it's not quite sure of its plans or of how any of this might come together, but a unique, hopeful voice is gonna find something to make it work. Coupled with great acoustic interplay with the piano, how the gentle bass line ramps up across an exceedingly well-balanced mix, and just how well Brett Eldredge will sell it all the way through. He's got that optimism. Yeah, I'll say it. Led to many a good day indeed.
It's just fine with the nights. I sit alone and wonder why they say the boys don't cry.
Okay, my God, how to open up an album here. Neon Trees really needed to convince me that a 6-year absence from an underwhelming album was gonna be worth revisiting and the wait, and they got me from the first goddamn song. The new wave rollick that has just enough of the retro cadence to remind us exactly who this is, but arguably a hook more explosive than anything they've ever had, with Tyler Glenn in the immediate aftermath of a breakup and mid-breakdown where he's trying and failing to hold it all together. It's a song careening on desperation and high melodrama. In other words, a Neon Trees song at their best, and this was the white-hot starting point of their next new era. This album was also slept on by way too many people. It was genuinely great. You might see me reference it soon, but you know, while we're in the territory of retro and overlooked...
So feel the sun, don't feel the burn now. Keep on turning, let's go. I feel the light inside so bright now. So keep on falling, let's go.
Okay, look, I'm not completely on board with Kairos' flailing attempt at 80s prog rock, but when it comes to insanely lush production, one of their best hooks, a frontman splitting the difference between Peter Gabriel and Marco Seresto, and another song that's all about recklessly chasing a high, this is my fool's paradise for 2020, and that's even before the sax solo. What I appreciate most about this is that it's still somewhat messy in the composition and structure, especially in how they will careen across analog synth passages that might still feel kind of jumbled, but fits a song that is all about that wild, kinetic motion that you desperately want to preserve. This often wound up on my running playlist, often as a companion piece to the 1975's If You're Too Shy, Let Me Know, and while that just barely got edged out, this was so stridently unique in its sound and flair, it had to make the list. But you know, while we're in the territory of overlooked material...
God bless the young hearts sipping cheap wine, getting drunk with their friends for the first time, thinking nothing's gonna change till everything changes.
Look, I'm not gonna say it's always guaranteed when you can tell that there's a Laurie McKenna co-write, but she and Harry Styles, of all people, gave Cam one of her best ever songs that is way more confrontational to the reality of small town life than you would normally expect, reminiscent of the most biting cuts from The Bird and the Rifle, and I mean that as high praise. Except Cam has a huge voice and personality, can sell deep-seated pain effortlessly, and while the song seems like it's primarily in the third person for the majority of it, by the final hook, she highlights how she was really part of that same arc until she's not. And she took that hot sting of rejection to the lonely road. Pair it with the painfully brittle acoustics off the supple synth backdrop with exactly the swell it needed on the bridge with Harry Styles himself whistling in the background. Look folks, there will be more pop country in this list, but it's not much better.
If it hurts, either way, what's the point in dragging it out? Let it fade on either side.
Okay, fine, one more Ruston Kelly song, and if more of the album had this sort of anthemic blasting energy, I think a lot more people would still be higher on it. Now, for me, still one of the best of 2020, we'll get to why later on, but I also can't deny that when Ruston Kelly opens up for those big anthemic moments, this time all about facing those inner demons and the questionable pain lurking beneath the surface, why not drag it kicking and screaming into the blazing light of truth no matter how painful it will be? Yeah, he's gonna knock this out of the park to the surprise of nobody. It's not aggression so much as it is purification, more for himself than anyone else. And there is a part of me that just loves the little meta text of after an entire album of sifting through his own feelings and angst, he's canny enough to say it's almost over by placing this near the end of his album. I mean, what's the point of dragging it all out? It just kicks all amounts of ass.
And they said, there goes the last great American dynasty. Who knows if she never showed up, what could have been?
So in terms of pure artistic craftsmanship, this might be one of Taylor Swift's best pieces of writing to date. I feel like she doesn't feel the need to center herself in the storytelling while still being very present in it. I love her cutting into wasp Americana with such feminine precision. I love the low-key piano-backed groove that makes it one of her more propulsive songs in 2020 in a really subtle, understated way. The framing of the scene is impeccable and leaving her protagonist's real-life story a bit ambiguous in motivation. It was such a great sense of detail to paint the scene, but also give it the legacy, larger-than-life feel, and then show the continuity into her with one of her best lines. I had a marvelous time ruining everything. A marvelous time. This is a song where Taylor Swift got out of her own way and she made one of her best songs. But you know what? Speaking of a song where the artist gets out of their own way, so to speak.
Can't stay forever, let's play pretend and treat this night like it'll happen again. You'll be my bloody Valentine's night.
Yeah, you know what? Call it heresy all you want. This song rules. I've said it before that Machine Gun Kelly is kind of a massive dumbass, and he keeps proving it. And he's probably best being the dazed and confused passengers to his own song, no matter how much he tries to wrestle it to his will. And this is a great example of it. Not just in the video where Megan Fox steals the entire show. I mean, come on, let's not look down on this. This happens with most of the best Weeknd songs too. But in this case, the entire song is his bewilderment, that he's falling in love, and he's trying to play it with rockstar detachment, and he's failing. That's where the emotional core of the song just rockets through, riding the best groove that MGK has ever had and Travis Barker's ridiculously propulsive drumming. It also helps it's one of the better produced songs on Tickets to My Downfall. Not saying much, but when you have a hook that is this good and Machine Gun Kelly kind of being a note-perfect fit for this sort of roller coaster, the shine comes back to the cliches, and you get something special.
Done walking in the snow. Goddamn that motherfucker cold. Just got done walking in the snow. Goddamn that motherfucker cold. Just got done walking in the snow. Goddamn that motherfucker cold. Just got done walking in the snow. Goddamn that motherfucker cold.
I mentioned at the top there is not a lot of hip-hop on this list, but the stuff that is here packs a painful wallop, and Walking in the Snow is one of the most grisly slices we got this year. What I appreciate most about the song is that it's the closest to the most shockingly immediate moments of Run the Jewels 2. It's panicked, but poised. The guttural guitars whipping into the klaxon that drives the punishing groove that gets even more haunted over Killer Mike's verse. And well, his reference to Eric Garner proved way too prophetic and not being prophetic at all in the uprising surrounding the death of George Floyd this year. Killer Mike also drives to the need of real activism and building off the edifice of moral superiority built by evangelical Christianity that LP rips into. He highlights how Jesus Christ himself was killed by the state, likely someone who evangelicals would castigate for his own words in times like this. And while Gangsta Boo gives it a bit of a light touch by the very end, the duo does realize just how much their loaded words will place them in a different sort of danger, especially this year, and those who run on a true revolutionary message will find themselves bereft of opportunities and become more of targets. Not quite the most personal moment on the album, that's A Few Words for the Firing Squad Radiation, which just barely barely missed this list because the outro kind of collides with the album's framing device, which doesn't quite stick the landing, especially with all that Titanic buildup, but this is one of the most cutting, to be sure.
On the floor, I pace, I run my mouth, I pray and wait, I cross out his name on the page. This washes away.
So can I just say the bridge and move on? Seriously, it's such a striking moment of ecstasy that Perfume Genius has mastered yet again, that you would think the song is just the most upbeat and dance-ready on the album already before it transcends itself. It's a vibrant exhale, the post-breakup dance song where you're heading out there to get rid of the pain, and then mid-song you get the euphoria when it actually lifts. Gorgeously arranged, Mike Hadrius remains a stunningly emotive vocalist to deliver it, and it's the sort of moment that pulls up the entire album into brilliance by its mere appearance. Not often did we have moments where a song like this was appropriate, but man, needed nonetheless.
Swearing like the captain of the riverboat queens, hauling all your money down to New Orleans. She got it, heartbreakers smile.
Oh god, this song. You know, Gabe Lee is just so unbelievably charismatic, and the warmth that carries through the split of two wanderers who have to head back to the road, it's so damn charming that it's almost a little bit disarming how much a relatively simple song will sneak up on you. Backed up with some great piano off the twangier elements, that a harmony on that hook for which I want to sing along with every single time. But that warmth really is the key to why it works. You can tell that there's a part of them that both want to believe that this can work and she'll make one last desperate swing to cling on to him, but he's also enough of a realist to admit probably won't. He's got to let everyone down easy. Where on some level though, they both have that heartbreaker smile and they can appreciate the moments that they did have. Definitely one of my sleeper hits this year. Just terrific.
It's October and I'm tired.
It's October, and I'm tired. I mean, I shouldn't have to say more, but Open Mike Eagle's plain-spoken evaluation of where everything went wrong in 2019 for him, it became a lingering, painful echo in 2020, in a month of chaos and panic where you couldn't quite shake the pit of your stomach anxiety, you wanted to rest, you wanted to decompress, and you just couldn't. But even removed from that moment, the song still hits like a ton of bricks. The cancellation of a show, the collapse of the Hellfire Club reunion, the divorce. It's the dramatic low point of the album. It's so spare and honest that there was no need for added ornamentation. The words were strong enough. Way too real, a little bit too, way too much, and yet it was the balm I think we all needed. At that moment at least, but likely it'll last.
Melancholy kaleidoscope, it's high time you shake things up and get the picture in your head right.
Honestly, I'm a little bit baffled why so many months later, this wound up a pop-punk song that was on my rotation without fail. I mean, it's the best thing All Time Low has done in years, arguably just by sticking to a formula that works. Maybe it's because it was on my running playlist, who knows? But I do think there's a little more to it. Partially was the roiling snares that built up into the first hook, but a larger part of it is how it feels like the constant struggle to put forward positivity and optimism, and you can't be 100 if you're only given 95. This song is pure denial, trying to force yourself to keep on chugging forward on adrenaline maybe. Hell, that's probably why it's such a great workout song. But it also feels like there's a bit more pathos to this cut that's a little bit more unique in modern pop punk for a band like All Time Low. Plus, I just love how they use the word kaleidoscope. I mean, hold on to that. We might come back to it. So apparently apparently nobody else really loved that Creeper album the same way I did, so let's focus on the album's villain song in the narrative. It's going for more of a gothic Roy Orbison vibe with some snarled country-adjacent elements that lets Will Gould vamp in his lower register pretty damn convincingly. Yeah, it's clearly retro, honestly kind of camp, but the band leans into it. It's probably the only way they could conceivably sell the line, "Nobody survives the night in paradise." And plus, when you don't think the song can get any more ridiculous, there's one of the best sax solos you're gonna hear all year. I do think a lot of folks felt like the retro glam of Creeper was a bit of a bait and switch away from their punk edges of their debut. But you know what, for me, they keep making stuff where they nail the theatricality this well, I ain't gonna complain whatsoever.
And I want you to hold me and take me into your arms, safe from the storm.
So this was also from a great album. I mean, you wouldn't know it because Capitol Nashville picked the worst possible singles in marketing, and for some ungodly reason, the band thinks only Karen Fairchild can take more of a lead on those songs. But when Philip Sweet got this, he knocked it out of the goddamn park. A soulful love song with fantastic harmonies, an organic arrangement, but not one that feels overstated, and he can belt with the best of them. There's passion here. This is a very early standout for me in 2020, and the fact that this has held its luster for so long through so much, it's a testament to the simple brilliance of it all. I mean, this could have been shipped to country radio, it would have cleaned up. That's all I'm saying. Keep it in mind.
They say sing your song, boy, shut your mouth. But I believe in a better South.
You know, if there was a reason to listen to the newest American Aquarium album, besides the fact it's great, it's this song. The best on the album, where BJ Barham hammers in on the central motifs of maturity and redemption that ran through it, but this time expanding much wider, to point a righteous finger at the American South to shred the racist remnants of Confederacy and bigotry that's remained. He literally calls them monuments to treason. In a country song. I mean, it pulled no punches, it definitely ruffled a few feathers, but what kind of escapes the conversation is that the song just kicks ass outside of the content. It's one of the more traditional country arrangements, especially with a lot of the pedal steel and the organ interplay, a well-timed key change, well-balanced guitar lines, and BJ Barham can back it all up. A little less ragged, and all for the better here. This kind of was a year where country had to get political, and this, one of the best examples.
You were my crown, now I'm in exile, seeing you out. I think I've seen this film before, so I'm leaving out the side door.
So look, I know that both Folklore and Evermore have been kind of throwaways for Taylor Swift, but when you get Bon Iver sounding better than ever in his lower register and you've got such an obvious slow burn single like this, you can promote it. This would have been a hit. But this is also one of their songs where it almost feels self-evident that it's fantastic. The strained pianos that are well placed to open up to a more glittery, wistful mix as precisely the right time. Taylor Swift has better chemistry with Justin Vernon than I think she's had with anyone ever. And they drill into the complicated relationship scene where he finds her with her new partner years later at a party, and suddenly there's this torrent of old emotions where at least one of them has to make that Irish goodbye. This is a song that's all about the deeply buried subtext that's on the cusp of becoming a real text. And while there's been a lot of comparisons made to the last time, Taylor Swift's song with Gary Lightbody of Snow Patrol, yeah, let's be real, this is in a different ballpark. Could have been a hit this year, that's all I'm saying.
Damn you for breaking my heart. Damn you for breaking my heart.
I'm both kind of surprised and I'm not that this song wound up so high on my list. Yeah, it was on my workout playlist and that's always a quiet boon, but this is also a side of Caitlyn Smith that I really like and we don't see that often. She's got a very clear and strident tone in her voice that works well when she underplays for slow burn cuts or even the power ballads, but this is where she turns up the recklessness, or almost feels a little bit like a Florence and the Machine song, where she is in full meltdown mode post-breakup and it ain't pretty. The funny thing is that she actually wrote this with her husband, but she sells righteous strident anger so well where everything's gonna blow up in her face that maintains the white-hot balance between rage and grief requires such a command of atmosphere, and she holds it all together. It's also reaching the point where I didn't really mind the reverb-saturated mix and playing off the more developed percussion and the cycling guitars, half because a lot of the rougher edges are still there, and it's a scale that's something that she can actually match with her voice. Again, y'all slept on this one. There's a list ahead where I will have a lot more to say on it, but you've got time to catch up. Tick-tock. So there's a lot of desperation at the roots of the best cuts from Spanish love songs, and this might be one of their most bleak to date. Half because the guitars pick up more reverb and feel a little more chilly and melancholic, but also because the content's gonna drill into that existential angst of living in a world where the effects of climate change are becoming way more pronounced, and you've got neither the money, the momentum, nor the power to really affect lasting change. And how this song digs into that crisis of motivation, it's truly gutting. You want one of those assholes to really fight you so you can get your own money, maybe escape all of it, but you won't. Because nobody wants to hear your cliched protests. Give us some nostalgia songs, and God help you if you struggle with any sense of guilt or shame for whatever action you millennials can or cannot take. I mean, this is a song on the tipping point of nihilism, and it highlights just how easily you can tumble over it, especially when you're burned out anyway, and where activism became a rallying cry for so many of us in 2020. Oh God, this was way too real.
The only trick they've ever been taught to do, to take a breath and close their eyes, 30 seconds at a time.
There are some songs that are all about the details, the scenes that they paint, and in Gabe Lee's best song to date, he captures the weight of just a short bracket of time and what it can mean for anyone, be the stone junkies by the tracks who want to find a fragment of ecstasy, a homeless woman trying to slow down traffic to catch a moment of attention at the lights, or even Jesus Christ himself sneaking a meal at a diner on the break from heaven. And what I appreciate about every single scene here is how the central figure on some level is forgotten by larger society, or has fallen between the cracks of that society, a more ordinary presence. But the value of that time, same for everyone. And that quiet, tragic populism is so stirring, so instantly memorable that it grabs me, if even for the shortest snippet. Also, there's a line that I really want to quote verbatim. Now there's a man who spends his whole life fighting evil. Best fill up that boy on all the carbs that he can eat. Feeding Jesus has never sounded quite this poignant. Yeah, I told you this would be here. Now, even I'm a little bit surprised it wound up this high, but then I would re-listen to it another half dozen times and I knew it could not be anywhere else. I already went into a lot of the personal details as to why I adore this song on my best hit songs of 2020. Check out that list if you want that, but this will likely go down as one of, if not the best song by The Weeknd. And that says a lot.
Well, you done fought for someone new. You want, then you do.
Okay, you know what? Maybe this is my sleeper cut of 2020. A deep cut from Brett Eldridge where he writes in the second person about the ups and downs of the single life, finding a relationship, getting caught up in the whirlwind of it all, and then for it all to collapse and repeat the same goddamn cycle all again. And what throws me about this song is that he can make the normal sound so distinctive, so universal. It's also a song that plays with time, but more in the inescapable progression, where you might not expect or plan for any of this mess, but it just keeps on coming, despite what control you think you might have in the scene. It's why the arrangement is so stripped down and middle of the road. It enhances that gentle, prodding, plotting feel scale where you can easily reject everything, but also embrace that glimmer of subtle hope and that something might be real along the way. I mean, you can't try to plan it, you just gotta live it. And the world-weary maturity and how Brett Eldredge frames it, I think that makes all the difference.
And it feels like get your ass down to the floor. You'll never know, you'll never know. You ain't so special when everything blows and it's so gone over you. It's so gone over you.
When I first heard this song, and it blew my goddamn mind, I tweeted that there was a part of me that would want to do a tab of legit acid while listening to this, and there's not much legit acid left, but that would also be very deeply terrified to do so because I think it might break my brain in a way where there'd be no coming back. But Enlacing is the sort of song where it's all about the inexplicable, the cosmic, where you stare into eternity and something snaps, interwoven with dance floor euphoria and the band's most striking anthem since Body and Blood. But it's the transcendent subtleties that still kind of unnerve me about the song. The slight instability in Daveed Diggs' delivery, the echoing vocal samples that build to the buzzing swell, how this song mirrors its late counterpart on Clipping's last album, which was all about suicide and the decay of body and art. Whereas this, it embraces the vibrant anathema at their core to just blow it all apart. This is primal on a level that only a few acts have ever dared attempt, and Clipping, they somehow pulled it off.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, come on. Yeah.
Okay, so I've said before that when talking about certain art that it's just not fair that they hit an emotional core so effectively that I couldn't even pretend to be objective as if I believe in that nonsense anyway. And the Avalanches did it twice this year. First with Rivers Cuomo, and here with Kurt Vile and Wayne Coyne, making the best thing that either man has touched in years. This is the moment where the themes of space and psychedelic transcendence and being able to reach some kind of heaven beyond our human experience, they intertwine and they form a synthesis that is goddamn magic. Kurt Vile can ramble about taking the leap amidst references to Lou Reed and William S. Burroughs, and it damn near has more power than anyone trying to force that ascension as the bells ring opposite the flutes, the jingling beat, the acoustics, and the interweaving blur of vocal samples that blur into something that's damn near heavenly. Again, this ain't fair, but don't take it back.
'Cause I think it could be love, but I can't show you in love.
So, enter Shikari. This is not a band I would ever expect to hear on my year-end list, especially not this high with their increasingly overprocessed brand of jerky electronic rock. But Satellites takes the same skyward swell and blends it with queer themes of coming out and seizing one's own personal truth in a way that feels both colorful and legit kind of inspiring. And I think the song gets to the fact that even despite legality, there's still real anxiety about showing any sort of outward affection, and that a universal theme the band can sell even before the distance between loved ones throughout 2020 provided more amplification, because of course it did. Again, maybe this just got super inflated on my list because Workout Staple and the crescendos are just amazing, some of the best of 2020, especially riding off some of the more aggressive breakbeat elements. And yeah, the entire album's still an overheated mess with as many misses as hits, but at least we got this, and it feels special all the same. But you know what, speaking of surprises...
You want me to forget you? Okay, forget me too. You tell me you hate me, baby. Yeah, I bet you do.
That's right, folks. 2 Machine Gun Kelly songs on this list, and one's in the top 10. Y'all can deal with that. But honestly, even despite the fact that the production here is audibly worse than compared to Bloody Valentine, this song works for all the same damn reasons. Except this time it's in full meltdown, where MGK is panicking that he and his ex keeps colliding in increasingly destructive forms, because neither of them are truly over each other, and yet for as kinetic and cliched as it all is, an emotional kaleidoscope, it's not Machine Gun Kelly that puts us among the best. It's Halsey. Yeah, her blurred over entrance and first lines in this song is one of the best moments in music I heard all year. She sounds vibrant and righteously pissed, and frankly better over rock instrumentation than she has possibly ever. And then when you pair it with the righteous kick to the nuts that Machine Gun Kelly needs and the real chemistry she seems to have with him, yeah, definition of cheap, explosive melodrama. It works in the best way possible. The fact that this is not the rap rock pop punk crossover ruling modern radio, it's a travesty. And at least the duo seems to get this. It should be a single in the near future, but in my opinion, might be among the best things that either of them have ever made. That's high praise indeed.
Claim you're a hero if you just make it off the couch. You know the truth in what they say. The world's gonna kick you either way.
I think some people might think it's kind of weird that after praising such a disposable pop conflict, I would flip to a song in close to the same genre and highlight what works here. But that's because there's a difference between melodrama and actual drama, and there's a scale of quality for both, and Spanish Love Songs found the gut punch of the latter. Kick, it's the most obvious standout on the album for a lot of reasons. It's not just me saying it. It's written primarily in the second person, so the universality and populism is emphasized, especially as you now get scenes of parental figures shooting up in front of their kids and then pontificating about religion, especially as poverty runs rampant and you're doing whatever you can to break free of the cycle of drug abuse and crime, and yet for every step you take, it's gonna keep on kicking you harder and harder. It's a song that focuses on just how hard it is to be a good person in the modern world, maybe even a hero, all the while being racked with the guilt of not being a better person. As you ain't able to save everyone, there's no easy answer. Title's apropos, except it can hit the audience as hard as the protagonist, and it really does.
You left me with nothing, not like any other stranger. But why do I think of you? You left me with nothing, not looking any other stranger. Just trying to get over you.
And now back to the melodrama, I guess. But you know what? Niall Horan makes this post-breakup fling feel like so much bigger. Full disclosure, this might be his finest song to date. A whirling outgrowth of Put a Little Love on Me, where he's now actively trying to get over his ex and processing those emotions, all as he falls into something new. But what gives the song its power is how Niall Horan slowly comes to the realization of everything that was deeply broken about that former relationship. It wasn't honest. It wasn't reciprocal. He probably gave way more than he should, and that gives him some righteous anger in order to sell it, but he's clearly not over her. It shows, and it's also a masterclass of build-up and production. Greg Kurstin lets the reverb vocals play off the washed-out pianos and guitar before letting the percussion crash at the forefront. And even as Niall Horan sounds rougher than ever, he sells it all. It works. It makes sense. It feels that stormy and tempestuous. Again, it might be nowhere close to as pretty as a Harry Styles song, but this was the track that put Niall's pop craftsmanship on a different tier. Stunning work.
And your strike may have been exact, but you know that you never really go to the mat. You tie everything up ready in the second act. When you know that it didn't go exactly like that, you arrive and drive it like it's all stuff back. Like you know you should know, but you don't know where it's at. Like you know you should know, but you don't know where it's at. Like you know you should know, but you don't know where it's at.
Granted, there is a gulf between the risks he takes and what Fiona Apple is doing here, because my god, this is the sort of piece that builds off the cacophonous energy of her album and hits its epicenter, and the composition's something else. It's the most openly jagged and fractured song on Fetch the Bolt Cutters, but that's because it kind of has to be. Setting the scene of a woman who sees her Hollywood partner not just abuse women in multiple dimensions, but frame himself as the good guy, as the protector, the defender of those that he pulls into his toxic orbit. Again, it's clear this guy in this picture is convinced he is the hero, even as he's obviously a raging hypocrite, and the multi-track first two verses are building up that rage, and then the tempo shifts dramatically to a gallop, and it doesn't quite diffuse things, but it shifts the power dynamic. The song gets more unsettled and wild, and then Fiona Apple delivers the most incendiary lines on the entire album. Well, good morning. Good morning. You raped me in the same bed your daughter was born in. And even if it's all just fictional, or given voice to another woman's story, or just something so deeply personal that the only way she can express it is in the starkest of contrast, it's truth for as much as Fiona Apple has interwoven the stories in prettier packages, because this is where it becomes all too close to reality. This hits you in a similar way to Lingua Ignota's Caligula, or for a popular example, Till It Happens to You from Lady Gaga, or Praying by Kesha. The raw truth, the reclamation of agency, cannot be ignored.
The earth is radiantly suicidal. Well, the earth is radiantly suicidal. So if there's any play in favor of survival, it's go small.
Oh, did any of you think you were going to get a list from me in 2020 without a song with prominent anti-fascist text and subtext? Yeah, here's one you didn't hear and I found on accident on Bandcamp, but it became one of the most striking songs of activist rage I heard all year. It's a song that gets the reality of environmental collapse and gross economic inequality, but also realizes that for as much as you might have dreams of revolution, you still need to find a place to heal and motivate yourself to keep on going. We're the blur of societal collapse placed in the context of history, but if you want to survive it, you need to build your secret garden within. And I love the blend of sound here. The spare acoustics playing off the drums that legit sound incredible. The sharp blasts of synth as accents off the layered backing hums. The fact that our frontman can ease back and actually coax out a real hook to capture some serenity, barely control the rage, and a theatrical pop impulse it just gives us one of the most amazingly sticky hooks I've heard all year. Just the fusion of genres to sound this organic, to capture a mood so brilliantly unique. Well, sometimes you gotta go small, with the knowledge that planting the seed can build to so much more.
Going against my own soul's warning, and in the end, something just didn't feel right.
You know, when I first heard that the Killers were working with the members of the War on Drugs, it set expectations sky high. But this is the opening track. It met, it surpassed them in spades. The other big anthemic song from this band about throwing it all to the wind for a chance to return to love. All coaxed through the sort of enormous biblical language that makes it feel so much larger than life. In other words, it's a Killers song is doing exactly what they normally deliver, but it's probably their best individual cut since A Matter of Time from Battleborn, with a huge glistening guitar line at the core that builds layers of supercharged, gleaming swell. It feels like an absolute stampede of energy by the time that final hammering progression comes in. Even the folks who didn't like that Killers album, they could grudgingly admit, yeah, this was something special, and in my opinion, it's among their best.
I just wanted you to know that this is me trying. I just wanted you to know that this is me trying.
Okay, so last year I very nearly put The Archer on my year-end list of my favorite songs, but it wound up getting cut because it was inevitably tied into memories and experiences that I really couldn't divorce it from, lowered it in my opinion. Kind of a shame, it is still a great song, one of the best points within Lover, but little did I know Taylor Swift was not only going to surpass it, she was going to infuse it with all the vulnerable pathos she's been building for years, with one of the most explicit callbacks to one of her best songs in Back to December, and I'm inclined to say this might be damn close to her best song regardless. She kind of transcended it, and as someone's been on the Taylor Swift roller coaster for way too long, really since her debut, this feels like the culmination of history that feels a lot more real than she's ever allowed herself to be, accepting where she's broken and failed her own relationships, where she's fallen back within her own mind, where she admits a skill to wound with her words both internally and externally, and the alcohol abuse has been the lingering, numbing subtext of the past couple of years. But even as the synths will thrum in the mix, she's trying. She wants people to see that she's trying, even though, just like on Back to December, she kind of knows it's futile. Coupled with the crescendo that doesn't have the feel of the Archer's anti-climax, this might be the most deeply moving song she's ever released. And you know, in 2020, sometimes we all just needed to keep on trying. I see you.
Dying,
For those in the know, they might call this cheating because this song was first prepped as a single in 2017 and wasn't properly included on an album until this year. But I didn't hear it until 2020 because Arista Nashville is full of incompetent nincompoops who don't know an obvious goddamn hit if it smacks them in the face. Thank God Cam was able to finally include this on an album proper, where the song is framed as a response to Dolly Parton's Jolene. That's not just engaging with a complicated apology to the woman that he cheated with, but also a host of other messy contradictions in that she feels cheated and betrayed as well by the guy in question. And the pleas to find some sort of middle ground, they're just as much up in the air. But what makes this song the arrangement, that hook, the perfect multi-tracking, the gallop of the groove, how the song just runs in so much sheer panicked momentum, especially into that guitar solo on the bridge, and Cam showing off the pipes that made her such a talent on Music Row. The fact that this song went ignored in 2017 in favor of Body Like a Back Road, that's an indictment against Nashville at the very core. And if anything, it adds to the more desperate Hail Mary feel of this song in the meta text as well, where it's likely nothing's gonna work with this confession, but she wants some degree of closure. But I don't know. The second I heard this song, I immediately knew it would be among my favorites. It damn near single-handedly got me far deeper into Cam's criminally ignored sophomore album than I think many would ever expect. Almost my favorite song of 2020, except for one exception.
That's where I learned it all from them, to fight, to love, to laugh again. Man, I thought we were only wasting time out on a Sunday drive.
You know, I remember saying in 2016 that sometimes an artist will cut a song that fundamentally changes how you'll see them as a performer for the rest of their career. A signature moment that even if everything else they put out didn't measure up, they'd always have this. For Charles Kelly in 2016, it was the song Leaving Nashville. And for Brett Eldredge, the industry favorite but perpetual B-lister of Music Row, it was the title track of his best album to date, Sunday Drive. It's not a song for which he's got a writing credit, but it's one where you feel as if he could. It's a song he's reportedly had in some capacity for nearly a decade, but he wanted to record it right, and as such he plays it with such understated empathy and warmth and understanding of the complexity that it feels like his. Another story tracing a long expanse of time over delicate pianos and strings as he paints the image from those family moments, from childhood to going on the road to growing old together. But in truth, this is a song that's all about cadence and flow, masterfully crafted and paced so that a song all about what we don't know and might not appreciate at the time gets coaxed into something so much more. The lines that really stick out the most to me are where he doesn't fully understand, where it all might just be ordinary moments but are imbued with so much more as he sees it all fly by so fast. Or to quote him directly, "Man, I thought we were only wasting time." But you know, there's a sense of grounded peace and gravitas to the song that Brett Eldredge can convey that can show the love at the core can persist. The world might be changing around you, but some things will always ring eternal. And I can't presume to make all this about 2020. It's not. Brett Eldredge did not intend it all for being that way. But there's a resonance that only deepened throughout this past year with this song, where anyone who's shared it, who anyone has heard it, cannot deny its simple beauty. It's on another level. Yeah, it's not close, people. Brett Eldredge sealed a stretch of time within a Sunday Drive and made not just his best song, possibly of his career, but the best song of 2020. No contest. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I cannot describe how much of a living hell recording this has been, so I truly hope you stick around for my upcoming videos, because man, it's been a bit of a ride. Yes, I apologize for the lateness. There's been a lot going on. I'll explain more in my list of the best albums of the year coming up soon. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. I'm assuming you've got comments about this list, leave them down there below. And beyond that, if you guys want to help support the channel or potentially get albums on my schedule when that opens up, or hell, even join my Discord server, link to my Patreon is right over there. Please do not feel any obligation to do so. Again, tough times out there, I fully understand, but if you want to get involved, there's your chance. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse. Happy New Year to y'all, and I'll see you next time.